Miranda, thank you so much for being here. I think we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for the second episode of ESG's brand new webinar series, Customer Success Unlocked. I'm Marley Wagner. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing and Services here at ESG, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar titled The Role of Human Capital Management in Customer Success. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, today's session will be more of a fireside chat style interview between myself and Miranda, so you won't be seeing slides on the screen, but I promise that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with your Zoom. So second, just a reminder that we are recording the session, and a link to the recording will be made available within 24 hours of this webinar. Throughout today's session, you're more than welcome and invited to submit your questions via the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many questions as possible, both throughout the webinar as well as during the Q&A portion at the end. Now, I'm very, very pleased to introduce you to today's presenter, Maranda Dziekonski. Miranda is the Chief Customer Officer and Interim Head of People at Swiftly. Miranda has over 20 years of experience, both working in and building world-class operations. She has extensive experience building and scaling teams in both early and mid-stage startups, and has been a part of 3 companies with successful exits. That stat about you, Miranda, is amazing, by the way. Miranda's specialties are, of course, in customer success, but I love that your background is so varied: renewals management, customer support and tech support, contact centers, sales, operations, and you have a myriad of awards and honors to your name, I know, and have been such a strong and prominent voice in the customer success space. So I'm so excited that you're here today to share your unique perspective with us on this really important topic.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Marley. And I also, for those that are at larger companies, I spent the first probably 10, 11 years of my career at very large organizations. One that I was at, we had 30,000 employees globally, and I was there for 9 years. So I kind of cut my teeth at that organization and really learned operations and how we want to build out, very customer-centric organizations. And I brought that from Michigan, where I grew up, out here to Silicon Valley. So I'm now in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I've been here for about 11 years. So customer success, for those that are connected with me on LinkedIn, you probably already know, I talk about it a lot. I write about it. I'm pretty passionate about it. It's such an interesting career for folks who love like operations and analytics, but also want that people side, because it can hit all of those buckets and more. So I'm pretty excited to be here today talking about this topic.
I love it. Thank you so much. So I want to start off by talking about, I mentioned your really, really varied background, all sizes of organizations, tons of different departments. Now, you're so focused and tuned in on customer success, but today we're specifically talking about that people component of CS, right? So curious to hear from you, from your background, your experience, sort of how you even got interested in that people side, that people component.
Yeah, so I'm going to separate out a couple of things. I am the interim head of people at Swiftly. So I do run human resources. I've ran it here at Swiftly for 2.5 years. I'm eagerly trying to retire. So we're trying to replace that part of my job. But I'm going to separate that out from my actual interest in people and the management of people, because they're 2 very different things, right? So over the years, I've learned a lot, and I've been a manager for a long time now. And early on, I wasn't a perfect manager, as I don't think many of us are. And I had more of a, I don't want to say top down, but it was more top down than it probably should have been, and more micromanaging. And I learned really quickly that would demotivate my team super quickly. And I'm the one thing I am is I'm very perceptive, and I watch and I see how things work. I try something, I always look at the outcomes and results. And I learned early on that, wow, it's not as much about the process as it is about how you build the process and how you bring everybody along in the building of the process, right? In the beginning, I was very much okay, everyone, we're going to do 1, 2, 3 and ABC, and it's going to be great. And everybody's like, yeah, no, this isn't how we operate. So that really kind of started, turning light bulbs on in my head. I'm like, oh, I think I need to change my approach. So it was through trial and error where I started getting interested into the actual people side of what we can do to make a business stronger by really investing in our people.
I love that. And I think it's so important. We're also focused on what we're doing every day. And yes, leaders have to lead from the front and by example and with support and all those things. But, I think it can be easy to forget that, oh yeah, we have to bring people along with us for the ride, right? I think something you and I have talked a lot about in preparing for this conversation are all the parallels between the relationship a company has with its customers and then the relationship it has with its employees.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to just talk about that, because I think, again, it's something that we just don't always think of in our day-to-day, but it's so important to the success of any CS organization.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody's ever thought about this as much as me, but if you go to a whiteboard and you whiteboard out a candidate and employee experience from start to finish, which hopefully finishes, they stay, there is so much correlation between that and the overall journey of a customer. So if you think about it, when you're writing the job description and you're putting that out into the world, trying to attract talent, that's, same, it's correlated to like marketing, sending out marketing messages, trying to, fill that funnel with prospects. Then you go through the interview, not only are you interviewing this candidate, the candidate is interviewing you. And if you think about that from the customer side, it's the sales conversation. Not only are you, trying to get that prospect in the door, you want to make sure, of course, they're a right fit customer, but the customer is also looking at you to make sure you're going to be a right fit vendor. And then if you move to onboarding your new team members for success, you onboard and implement your new customers for success. And then how you manage and grow and evolve that relationship. The correlations are just really spot on if you think about that. So I tend to think about my team members as my customers, and even measure things like ENPS, so employee NPS, just like I measure NPS, attrition, also, expansion, which would be, are they growing and taking on more responsibilities and moving to other departments, within the organization, all of that. It's very, similar if you put that hat on.
Yes. I want to dig into each of those a little bit deeper, because I think there are so many nuggets of knowledge that you can share with folks for sort of how to think about each of those 4 steps you outlined in a more thoughtful, intentional way. So let's start with sort of what you equated to, the marketing phase of the employee process, right? It's about writing those job descriptions, posting your jobs, all that. Talk about tips, tricks, best practices people can be using at the beginning of that new interaction with a potential employee at that point.
Yeah, I'm by no means an expert job description writer, but you want to make sure that it's representing you, your culture, who you are. We at Swiftly, we have a pretty fun culture. And so, for example, today I'm trying to hire for technical support. So I just posted on LinkedIn.
I saw this, it was great.
And I created, I took Lionel Richie's "Hello, Is It Me You're Looking For?" And I made a little 2-sentence song out of it and posted it on LinkedIn. And that's kind of indicative of me, my management style, but also a little bit about our culture. So make sure that you're, be you in your job descriptions. I don't want to go down the DEI path because that's a whole nother conversation, but do research when you're writing your job descriptions to make sure that you are being inclusive in your job descriptions. I think a lot of folks have, too hard of parameters or too hard of lines, and they're completely excluding certain portions of the population. So I think that's important as well, that you're putting that lens on. But also that you're, just like in marketing, you go out and you market to customers where the customers are. Make sure once you write your job description, you're going out and you're getting the job descriptions out to where the talent pool is as well. So you are, attracting those that would add to your culture and add to your environment.
Yes. Yeah. Back to your point about inclusivity and all of that. I personally don't include number of years of experience on job descriptions that I write. I need you to have experience doing those things, but the amount of time for me is not always indicative of your actual experience level doing it, right? So I think thinking about things like that can be really helpful.
Yeah. I have often included years of experience. This recent job that I just shared on LinkedIn, I didn't write it, so I'm sitting here thinking, is it on there? Do we have years of experience? I couldn't say. So yeah, but that's a really good call out. And also we tend to hire folks from both, because we work with public transit. We hire folks directly from public transit. So I have folks on my customer success team that never did customer success, but they came from, the transit world. My, former manager in my HR team, she never did HR. She came from a nonprofit. She worked for a burn foundation, and she was the best manager of human resources I've ever worked with. Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to be open-minded and take those leaps if you can afford to.
Agreed. I love that attitude. So let's talk about sort of the interviewing process. I'm sure you spend a lot of time, especially with your dual roles right now, a lot of time interviewing. So what tips do you have for, I guess, both the interviewer and interviewees in the customer success space?
I've written a few articles about this. So I have a full interview process that I've published on my LinkedIn. You can find it in my articles. It even includes questions you can ask and kind of some little, or activities you could have them do. And this is more from a hiring manager perspective, but I also have it from the candidate perspective. So interviewing, just one, think about the experience from both. So if you're the hiring manager, think about not just what you want to get out of it, but what you want the candidate to get out of it as well. I think that's really key. I see a lot of one-sided interview processes that are cumbersome and long and just arduous on the candidates. That's a really bad experience out of the gate. And even if they get the job offer, they will likely remember how tough the interview process was. And I remember back in the day, that used to be like a crown. Like, I made it through this very tough interview process, and I am one of you now. I don't think that's the case anymore. It's a hot talent market. So, yes, you want to bring on the right talent. You want to make sure that they have attitude and aptitude to learn and grow and evolve. But having that crown of being the toughest interview in town and is no longer, I think, a glory point. So take a look at the total process and really hone in on both the candidate experience and and what you're trying to get out of it. Yes. And also feel free to go on my LinkedIn and check out both the, how to prep, because I do have expectations out of customer success managers that you're curious and you're going out there and you're doing your research and you're coming prepared. But also from the hiring manager, I have a ton of questions and stuff already ready to go for you.
Yes, I highly encourage everyone to go look at that on Miranda's LinkedIn. Such useful resources that I know a ton of hiring managers actually who have used from you, and it's made a world of difference. So
I use it in mine.
Yeah,
I've been using it for years. So it's grown and evolved over the years. But this is probably the most current iteration. So
awesome. So obviously after the interview phase, you find your perfect candidate, your unicorn. I know we all hate that word, but sometimes it's real. And then the fun starts, right? The onboarding. And again, so similar. It's funny. Someone on my team was writing an article about this today, the similarities between onboarding a new employee and onboarding a new customer. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, so once you get through, of course, the interview and you're hired, onboarding, actually, I like to think it starts during the interview process, right? You're already, kind of getting them used to who you are, what your culture's like, what the product's about, and you're getting to know them as well. I think a lot of, especially smaller startups, fall short in their onboarding. So I have a formal onboarding process that I brought with me from multiple companies now, and it's broken out into weeks. Like week one, it's like your baseline week. You get to know the people, you get to know our product, what we do. And back in the day when we were in the office, like here's the coffee machine and here's where the bathroom is and all of that kind of fun stuff. And now it's, remote. It's like, here's our Notion page with 50,000 different resources you can go through, but really build that foundation. And then you start putting your walls and your roof on, right? So the walls are, the team level training of where they're going to be. And the roof is kind of when you're finishing the house and they have their first customer calls or their milestones. I do a milestones program as well in all of my onboardings. And the milestones program is pretty much, you must be able to do these 5 things in this bucket, these 5 things in this bucket, and these 5 things in this bucket before I turn you loose with a customer. It's as simple as that. So onboarding doesn't need to be overly complex, but it should be very thorough because you're setting the team member up for experience. And onboarding doesn't end at week 1, week 2, week 3.
Yeah.
So I also say, make sure you assign an ongoing mentor. You have someone from HR that does, monthly check-ins to make sure people are moving along okay, especially in the remote world. It can be very easy to do the set it and forget it. Like, here's this spreadsheet, go through all of these things. So think about that experience. Think about how you want your team member to grow and evolve within your org and how you invest in that early.
Yes. And back to what we said before, so many parallels to the customer onboarding experience. How many times have we in the customer success space heard, onboarding is a make it or break it moment? It is no different for these employees. So I totally agree that really intentional, proactive, thorough approach is so key.
Yeah. I just will quickly add before we move in, it's way too expensive to recruit, hire, onboard, to fail at this, to have to lose a team member immediately and then have to do this all again. So just think about, it's kind of like on the business side, your cost of acquisition, you have your cost of acquisition and, you want to invest in it like that.
Yes. Great point. Great point. So the fourth sort of phase, if you will, of that journey, of course, is, steady state, run state, whatever we call it in with our customers, but it's, the management of your CSMs and not just CSMs, right? All the team members on your CS team. So same thing, talk to us about tips, tricks, best practices. I'm sure a lot of it runs over from onboarding, be thorough, make time, all of that. But what else?
So, I mean, a lot of what I'm saying is probably obvious, and so I'm sure nobody's going to leave here today with their minds completely blown. I'm probably repeating a lot of the things, but I want to reiterate some simple things around management. One, make sure you have regular cadence of conversations with your team members and that there's some kind of structure to it. So I have weekly one-on-ones with everyone on my team. Some of my team members I meet with 2, 3, 4 times a week, depending on what position they're in, what they own, what's going on. I have them own the majority of the agenda. I tell them, this is your time with me, come and bring what it is you need help with or, what's on your mind. I also deliberately talk to my team members about their career goals, which some managers shy away from a little bit. And I've made it very clear to them that if you tell me you want my job, that's what we're going to work on, is helping you get to where you need to be to eventually take my job. So, management isn't just about the day-to-day work that needs to be done. It's also about harvesting, growing, and helping folks develop and learn and grow in their world. I find it to be an honor to be able to be a people manager. And I've had, multiple folks come to me over the years and tell me they want to manage people. And one of my first questions is always why.
Why?
If they tell me it's because it's the next step in their career, I tell them to go back to the drawing board. because that's not a reason to want to manage people. Managing people means you actually are managing somebody's world, somebody's life. It's, you know, your decisions and the things that you incorporate in their day-to-day have impact. So it's important, just like how we think about our customers and making sure that they're achieving value. Think about your teams that way too. Think about how they're achieving value in their day-to-day with you, in their day-to-day with the organization. So when a recruiter reaches out on LinkedIn, which trust me, they do all the time to every any good customer success manager out there is probably getting recruiters reaching out. They're like, yeah, I'm good where I am, right? Because they're achieving that value. They're feeling like they're growing. They're having their desired outcomes.
Mm-hmm. So true. And I want to expand on that point that you just talked about. You know, good CSMs have recruiters reaching out to them all the time, especially right now. We know how tight, incredibly tight the labor market is, really everywhere, but I think we're feeling it very acutely in the customer success world, right? As a newer industry, it appears anecdotally to be potentially hitting CS even harder than, you know, maybe more established orgs like sales and marketing. So what kind of tips do you have, either for customer success professionals that are job searching right now, which sounds like it's a wild ride, yeah. Or on the flip side, I'm sure you are dealing with this constantly. What should companies be doing who are looking to hire their next CS role to make sure that they can, you know, keep up with the speed at which the market is moving right now, and, you know, to really present themselves in this sort of new employee first world we're in?
Yeah, so let me break that down into two things. So let's first talk about what should someone doing, someone trying to either get a new job or trying to get into CS, what should they do? And I've talked about this a lot. Again, not going to say anything revolutionary here, but first and foremost, network. A lot of the times, especially in the CS community, it's more about who you know and not what you know. There are a ton of opportunities out there, but there's also a lot of candidates, very talented candidate pool. So network, get your name known, you know, interact with folks on LinkedIn. There is so many ways now. I can't even imagine like what the world would have been like in the late 90s and early 2000s when I was just getting started if all of this was available. There is just so many ways now to get out there and get your name known with hiring managers. If you have a certain company that you want to work at, you know, follow people on LinkedIn and interact with their content if they share content. Also, another thing that I like to call out is be willing to start somewhere else and then work your way into CS. You know, some folks reach out to me and they've never done customer success before and they're struggling to get in. One of my things is don't ever, you know, sometimes you need to be a little humble and start in like customer support, customer service. I did back in the day. I answered phones at a call center and I worked my way to where I could do relationship management. So maybe start in a different spot within the organization, customer service, customer support, sales, SDR, depending on where you are at your level, be open to doing that. Also, another way folks can get in is just to leverage their domain expertise. So if you are in sales and you want to get into customer success, go out and find a software that caters to sales folks because you talk the language. You will be able to talk to the folks you're selling to. Yeah. Or if you are in, you know, education, I know we have someone on the group that's in ed tech. Let's say you are a teacher and you want to get into customer success, not unheard of. Okay, just so you know, I've had teachers, lawyers, all of these folks that I've interviewed or I know are moving into customer success. Yeah. Go find an ed tech product that you can get into because you speak the language that of, you know, the education industry. Those are things that folks can do that they're trying to get in. I'll take a deep breath and then I'll move on to what should employers be doing. Do you want me to just keep going?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So because it is a very hot market and, you know, kind of like buyer's market versus seller's market, like right now, it is the employees market, not the employers market. So employees, they can pick, the very qualified folks, they have their pick of where they want to go. So the biggest thing I think folks can do is make sure, one, at the top, your CEO really gets customer success, and customer success permeates through the organization. Customer success managers want to work at places where they feel valued, where their role is understood. So that really starts at the top and it trickles down. So that's first. Second is really think through all the programs that you offer that are attractive, not just to customer success, but to employees and team members. What do I mean by that? So some of the programs that I have in place, and some of these, I don't think I have all of them right now, but I have in previous companies, is one, I have career matrices in place. So people know, like, you'll start here and here's some options for you within the customer success org or within the organization. So they can visualize out potentially where they want to go. And I do talk about these things in interviews. I talk about, people ask, what does it look like? What's a career path look like? That's a great question. Let me show you. I also do what I call is like a future function roadmap. So I always am thinking about a year out. What am I going to need within my customer success organization a year out? And I have it all mapped out visually. And it shows, next year, I'll probably need someone in CS ops. I might need someone in enablement, and I'm likely going to kick off professional services. I share that with my entire CS org so they know a year out potentially, and I make it very clear, it's not written in stone. There has to be business need and then skill set, right? But it gives them an idea of where they could potentially move and where they should invest if that's what they're interested in. I also love mentorship programs. I think those are really important. Right now, we have a team member who she worked with me at a previous company. She came here and she's in my customer success team. She's moving to engineering, which I'm very proud of her. She's going to be a junior engineer. But she had a mentor within our company that she would work with on a regular basis. And, the mentor came to us and said, we think she's ready. So now she's moving. There's the business need and the skill set match up. Education stipends. I think that, it doesn't have to even be a lot of money, but even if you can give $50 a month, your team members or candidates that are looking at you can go in and, they could take little classes and stuff to continue to improve themselves. Last, I would say is making sure that you can talk about how you do goal setting with your team. I think candidates, they want to grow and evolve, and they want to be in an environment where they will not just be stagnant and they're feeling like they're learning. And I think, showing them how you set goals and how you partner with your team members to help them meet their goals, not just like work goals, but like professional goals, I think is pretty attractive as well. There's so much more we could do, but those are just, I've been talking for a long time. So those are a few things.
But those are all still important. And, again, you were saying, you're not going to say anything groundbreaking, but that's the thing. I don't necessarily think it's about being groundbreaking. I think it's about taking the time as leaders to focus on the things that we're not necessarily thinking about, right? We're focused on how do we keep the business running? How do we, put out the fires? How do we keep our own calendars from getting too ridiculous? I don't think any of us are very good at that one. But, things are always moving so fast that I don't always think we take the time to say, okay, let me pause for a second. Let me look at this from my team's perspective. Let me look at this from these, candidates' perspective. What are people seeing when they're interviewing with us? Back to your earlier point about really difficult interview processes. Yeah. It can be hard to interview. It can also be hard to navigate working some places. So how do we as leaders remove those barriers and make it easier? Yeah.
I just want to add too, I think a lot of programs are very one-dimensional. And, I know I have evolved and grown over the last, 15, 20 years. Gosh, I hope so. But our understanding of how we manage and candidate experience needs to evolve significantly. Like people learn differently. Like there shouldn't be like a one size fits all, and we should be okay with that. So I think that the next evolution is figuring out how do we set up an environment for team members and candidates to be their best selves. I don't think we're there yet, but you know, it's tough to say you should have like 2 or 3 different interview processes. But if you have someone who's neurodivergent or whatever it may be, I think in order to really level that playing field, that's like the next step of things that we need to figure out as an industry.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was having a conversation recently. Someone was telling me they were applying for a new job, and as part of the application process, there were all sorts of sort of inclusivity questions, and included in the questions were, are you okay with us sharing your answers to these questions with the hiring managers that you would speak to through the process, or do you want us to keep that in HR, right? And even to your point, I just thought that was so interesting. Of course, we've seen, how do you identify and all of those on applications, which is amazing. But that extra question of like, who can know about this thing about you, whether it's this is how I learn or what have you. I think that's sort of a glimmer of what you're talking about, of that next phase that eventually we'll get to a place where we can really tailor that whole process through interview, onboarding, and management to people's learning styles and to their individual needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that also ties in perfectly. We didn't even plan this, but that ties in so perfectly with the next question that I have for you. Because, not only are we as employees growing, but CS as an industry is growing so fast, changing so fast. New customer success roles are being created and implemented, I feel like every other week. I don't know, I heard some job title that I was like, what the heck is that, the other day? I was like, That's new, awesome, tell me more. So as that continues to, evolve, how do you envision that the sort of CS talent pool will evolve, and how we view that as an industry? How do you think that'll change and grow over time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think one of the things I think folks are realizing more and more is not all CSMs are the same. Not all CS models are the same. You need different types of CS managers or customer success managers for different types of products, different types of customers. I think that's just becoming more and more prevalent. And, I think as we grow and mature, it's going to even be more so. I think that we will eventually see customer success managers be in buckets, like kind of like now, like with sales. I'm going to use sales as a correlation. Like you have enterprise sales reps. If you're searching for an enterprise sales rep, you're looking for someone different than you are if you're searching for someone that's just in sales or that is a SDR. Like it's just different levels, but also different motions and different types of sales.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see that start to play out even more in the customer success world, because right now when we talk about customer success, we just say customer success. I'm starting to hear more now. People are like, yeah, this is enterprise, this is B2B, this is B2C, this is B2B2C. I'm starting to hear that more play out. And I think the talent pool is going to start following that, because we'll have folks that specialize in each of these areas, and they'll want to figure out, okay, I'm a B2C customer success manager. I really want to be a B2B. What are the different skill sets that I need to invest to move from this bucket over to this bucket? Or vice versa. Yeah. I'm seeing this a little bit play out, but it's still not widely talked about. I don't see it a lot in my LinkedIn newsfeed, and I don't hear about it a lot. So I think that's going to be one thing that we're going to see come out a lot. I also think within that, there are different types of like what you own, what you're held accountable for. So do you own a revenue number? Should you own a revenue number? Where do we draw the line from customer success becoming sales? So there's a lot of these things going on right now, and that has a direct impact on the talent pool. I think that's going to all start fleshing out more and more, especially, I mean, last year and a half has been a big year of change in customer success. We're the popular kids on the block. And
yes, it's so true.
Like, oh, yeah, all over companies, their top line growth kind of slowed. It's picking up now, but all over, I think boards were like, oh, protect the current revenue. And then boom, customer success was on the spot. And the companies that were doing it right, they didn't even flinch. Those that weren't doing it right, they had a lot of work to do to get caught up. And the talent pool feels that.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of eye-opening that happened, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, that those of us, in this space, who have been in this space, have felt like we've been screaming into a void for the last however many years about how important it is to, take care of that precious earned revenue that comes from your existing customers. And I feel like there were a lot of light bulb moments, exactly to your point, when, CEOs and boards were like, oh, okay, so we're not going to acquire as many new customers this year. What do we do about it? And the answer was and is customer success, as we know. We got a question from the audience that I think ties in really well to this topic. So I'm going to have you answer this one before we move on to my next question. So Irene is asking, you talked about setting up an environment for having people be their best selves. We're also at a time when diversity and inclusion and understanding implicit bias is prevalent. What is the impact of having so many different generations and styles in the office at this moment in time? What can managers do to help keep this smooth? Irene, this is such a good question.
Oh my gosh. So interestingly enough, at my company I'm at right now, and this is the first time I've experienced this in a long time. So when I worked at the large company when I was in my 20s, we had people across all generations, but we were, a huge company.
Yeah.
In tech startups, usually you don't see that much. Where I'm at right now, we have folks that are in their 60s and folks that have just exited college. And we're only about 100-person company. We're under that. We're probably like 90 right now. But we have, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s, like all of us in harmony. So if I understand the question, it's like, what do we do to help make sure all of that melds? Is that what? So
yeah, Irene, chat us if that's not the gist, but that's what I got.
Okay. Look, again, this is a difficult question, and I don't have the end all be all answer for this, but what we do at Swiftly is, one, of course, have everyone approach everything with a place of knowing everybody's coming from the best of intentions. Two, we hold events. We have a lot of ERGs. We have what we call brain trains, which is our lunch and learns, where people can come and present about something they're passionate about or something that they, want to share with everyone. We do lots of events that just really orchestrate togetherness and getting to know each other, like bananas. And when we were in the office, we would have happy hours, and people from all generations, we would all come together and, playing cornhole and do volunteering work. And so I don't think there is a perfect answer to this, but what I will say is making sure you're harvesting an environment that allows people to bring themselves to work, but also hire people that have that mindset of, I want to get to know other perspectives and understand where other folks are coming from, and make sure you're encouraging that across all parts and all levels of the organization, that it's not just my way because I said so. It's like, this is my perspective. What is your perspective? And encouraging that type of dialogue.
Yeah. And I think, that encouragement of people should be getting to know their coworkers on a personal level, right? Especially being, largely a remote workforce right now, that can be hard. So if a company is not facilitating that or encouraging that, it can be difficult for people working remotely to build those human interactions and human relationships, especially if folks, are from a different generation than them or on a different team than them or whatever it may be. It's really, it sounds simple, but it's not.
It isn't. And, we've done a lot of cool things over the past year and a half to try to help people get involved and get to know each other. Early on, we were doing like trivia nights, and you wouldn't believe how many people would show up from, every generation. We also have a lot of like social channels, we call it SOC animals, and everybody shares pictures of their pets. And then we have the parents channel, and we have the photo walk channel, and way too many channels, but you don't have to be in all of them. If you're interested in something, you can be in it, like music and food. And, we have a whole section in our Slack that's just social stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very active. Like, people love a good cat picture. I can't believe it.
We just saw so many very sweet back to school pictures this week. Most Colorado schools started school this week, and we had so many adorable back to school pictures of our employees' kids in one of our social channels this week. It was great.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not perfect. And look, there's always going to be different perspectives from folks of different generations, but it's not just different generations. It's also just coming from different walks of life, right? So it's all about entering in with an open mind and an open heart.
Yes, love that. Love that so much. So, we started this conversation by talking about the parallels between the employee experience and the customer experience, right? I want to talk about sort of the trickle down effect between those two things. Employee engagement absolutely trickles down to customers, but again, I don't think that's something we think about all the time. So talk to me about your perspective on how we treat our employees ends up in the long run impacting our customers.
Yeah, just think about it this way. If you as an employee are treated like, garbage, or you just feel bad about where you work or what you do or who your manager is, what do you feel like all day? What is your attitude like, right? That permeates out, right? That it spreads like wildfire. No pun intended. I'm in Northern California. I probably shouldn't use wildfire.
Knock on wood.
It's already smoky out. So, that will just spread like wildfire. So if you have team members who are engaged and feel like they're heard and they're adding value, and their manager is doing what they should be doing in regards to partnering with them and helping them grow and evolve, their mood is going to be good, and they're going to feel good about where they're at, and that will permeate to the customers. So I'm a big believer, and I said this a couple of years ago on a podcast, and I've been saying it again and again and again, but happy team members begets happy customers begets a happy business, right? Of course, it's more complex than that, but you get the simplicity of it. You don't want disgruntled folks representing your company. So don't create disgruntled folks. And don't get me wrong, there are going to be folks that are disgruntled because of nothing you did, but there are things you can control, and within that realm, try to control them.
Yes. It's funny. So ESG, all we do is customer success, right? We do customer success as a service. Every single person in our company does customer success. So you would think we would have a mantra about being customer first, right? We don't. We have a mantra about being employee first.
Yep.
For exactly that reason that you said. Because if you take excellent care of your employees, guess what? They are going to take world-class care of your customers.
Yep, exactly.
So we have quite a few questions from the audience that I'm going to throw at Maranda. Everyone on the call, if you have not submitted your question, please feel free to do so at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can. So great question from Sharon. She says, I'm new to a leadership role in CS, and I'm hiring 4 new open positions ASAP. What advice do you have? What pointers do you have for knowing what to look for in candidates to make sure we get the right people hired?
Sharon, first, if you haven't done so already, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll send you my articles. And for you, it's going to completely depend. It depends. It depends on what type of business you're in, what type of CSMs you need, what level of experience you're looking for. But I have a whole model written out of how I look for customer success managers. And I've used this model now at, HelloSign, which was B2B in B2B enterprise, but it has also a B2C component. And I used it at Paired and Rental, and it's now at Swiftly. So I've used this model for very different types of customer success managers, and just tweaked it based on my needs. So feel free to reach out and I'll give that to you. But first and foremost, Sharon, without that, take a look at the experience that you want your customers to have, right? So just write it out. Like, this is the experience I want my customers to have. Is it hands-on onboarding? Do I want them to have, quarterly business reviews? Are we collecting goals and meeting with them weekly to talk through their goals? Like, think about your blue sky dream and then think about what you can afford. Because like, I would love to be able to give the world to my customers, but I also have a budget, right? So then think about what you can afford. Then after you understand, well, I would love to do this, but I probably can only do this. Think about what kind of customer success manager you would need and the skill sets you would need them to have to be able to achieve that experience, and then back into it from there. Now, in regards to getting 4 as soon as possible, welcome to my world. This is what we do. It's usually I need more, and I need them now, and I need them right away. One, I think Irene may have shared this already, but we have the Customer Success Leadership Network. There's a channel in there where people that are looking for jobs, they're always posting their LinkedIns and their resumes. You can scrub there and kind of see what's going on. But there are many places where you can source your candidates. And I don't know if that's the question you're asking me, is how to get those filled as soon as possible. But, all I can say is good luck. It's a tough market right now. I wish I had the answer.
I know. I feel like everyone I talk to is saying that same thing. I need to hire 4 new people yesterday.
Yeah. Right. Oh,
the market is so tight and so hard.
I've been trying to retire from HR since January. Okay. I've been trying to hire a head of HR since January. And, it's a hot market for, customer success and HR. Those 2 are just on fire. Engineering's always been hot. So, but the other 2 now we're catching up.
Yep. So. Well, if there are any job searchers listening in, Maranda mentioned she's hiring. We're hiring at ESG. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Little plug for us both there.
Yeah, there you go.
And we have another question from another new manager, Greg. So Greg is asking, how do you balance managing one-on-ones to discuss career goals as well as day-to-day operations and customer touch points?
That's a really good question, Greg. Just so you know, I don't talk about career goals every week. That is a conversation that I have, maybe quarterly, and then we set up like activities they're going to do to help build skill sets. So for example, if someone said to me, I want to be a trainer, I want to do enablement, great. Let's talk about what that would look like. Let's talk about, I don't have a role for that right now, but maybe you should invest in this, this, and this, or it's more of a consolidated question. It's not a weekly thing. That's how I balance it. So I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that earlier. Like, you can't talk about career goals every single week because you got to work. But you also want the team to know you do care, because genuinely you should care about their goals and their career desires, but it needs to be a more consolidated conversation.
And having things like templates for those conversations, or a regular cadence, right? We say, we're going to talk about this on the first one-on-one of every month, or we're going to talk about this on the last one-on-one of every quarter, or whatever it is. Yeah. I think setting those expectations with employees can really help too, right? Yeah, we're going to talk about day-to-day work and what's going on and how to keep you productive and what you need from me every single week. And then we're going to have these specific times to have those more strategic long-term conversations.
Yeah, you have to build out what works for you, your company. I don't know how big your team is, right? There's so many nuances around this. But I also am going to be exploring, so we have Culture Amp as a system, and I'm going to be exploring using the goal setting in Culture Amp for everybody on my team. And if you're listening to this recording, surprise, we're going to be using Culture Amp to think through our goal setting. So, there are systems out there too, Greg, that you use Culture Amp. There's a goal setting function in there that you can work with your team on, and then you could set out all your activities on it. I haven't started it yet, but I've been looking at it and it seems like it'd be perfect.
Yeah, we use not Culture Amp, but I think a competitor of theirs, and it is, the goal setting is my favorite thing about the tool. It's awesome. Okay, one last question, last chance for everyone else. If you have questions for Miranda, put them in the chat or in the Q&A. Otherwise, one more from Irene. Thank you for all the questions, Irene. Irene would like to know, customer-facing roles often have to deal with difficult situations and conflict. This can lead to a negative experience for staff. How do you support your team through these situations?
I tell them to buck up. We all got that. No. Small joke, a couple of years ago, I had one of my CSMs had one of their customers say some pretty mean things to them. And they were crying, and I made them laugh because I said, "Welcome to customer success. You have arrived." It's not always like that, but there are, you do have occasions where you do have, I am in a camper, Colleen. I'm sorry, I saw the chat. I'm in a camper. My house is being remodeled. It's a mess. So yes, I'm in a camper. The gist of it is as a manager, this is going to happen in customer success. Anytime you're dealing with, people, and, we are customer facing, you're going to have difficult moments, difficult conversations. Hopefully, you have customers who can be respectful and your CSM can de-escalate. But first things first is make sure you are doing trainings around de-escalation with your team. Make sure they have a toolkit to be able to react in those moments if that is to happen. I think coming from customer support, that was ingrained in me. I knew how to de-escalate because it was trained as a customer support rep. Customer success, we're so focused on, proactive that sometimes we forget to teach the reactive skill sets like de-escalating situations. So that needs to be part of the roster. Second is if it's happened and now you have a team member who's upset, one, empathize immediately, talk to them, figure out where they are, how you can help if you can. And if you need to, step in. I'm someone who never hesitates to get on the phone. I have people who manage my teams now, and I'm always ready. I'm like, you want me to take the call? I'm ready. Like, put me in. Be ready to help take that off from their shoulders and help them, navigate that and get it to a better spot. The unfortunate thing with this customer success managers, and maybe fortunate, is if you have something like that and the customer success manager still has to manage that account, you have to think about a long-term strategy too, and how this customer success manager and that customer is going to be able to be successful going forward. So don't forget that part. I think a lot of people are like, well, we'll put a Band-Aid on this and we'll deal with this if it happens again. That feels terrible because then your CSM is dreading picking up the phone and talking to this customer. So you have to figure out that component as well.
Yes, so important. We don't like it when it happens, but it does. I think you were actually absolutely right what you said to that CSM. Welcome. It's just part of it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Awesome.
And thankfully, most of us have wonderful customers 99.9% of the times, but that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be rough patches.
There will be rough patches. I think one of the most underrated customer success skills out there is building rapport. Mm-hmm. If you build rapport quickly and get to know your customers and build those relationships as much as you can, and I'm talking about this from like a high touch model, those occurrences happen less and less. So
absolutely agreed. All about that relationship building.
Absolutely.
Well, Miranda, on that note, I want to thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I know our audience did as well. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, those very astute folks. I am in my camper trailer. Our house is under remodel. This is my working headquarters, and my 2 Shih Tzus have been very well behaved down here on the floor. So,
so sweet.
Thank you.
So sweet. And thank you all for joining us. A reminder that you'll receive the recording of this session within 24 hours. And I hope you will all join us again next month for Customer Success Unlocked, when Carlos Quesada of Aruba Networks and Rigo Rodriguez of Pure Storage will join me to discuss how to incorporate a center of excellence into your customer success operations.
Awesome. Thank
you
you
all.
so much. Bye, Marley.
Bye, Miranda.